Following Donald Trump's re-election in November 2024, tensions between the United States and Canada escalated due to trade disputes, as tariffs and countermeasures created economic uncertainty and diplomatic strain. The situation unfolded on November 25, 2024, when Trump declared on Truth Social his decision to impose a 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico, citing their alleged failure to secure their borders with the U.S. Additionally, he announced a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, urging Beijing to take stronger action against the production of illicit fentanyl destined for America. Trump's announcement was met with immediate backlash from both Canada and Mexico. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the move, calling it reckless and unwarranted, warning of severe economic consequences for both nations. Despite efforts from Canada to ease the growing tensions, Trump remained firm. On January 20th, 2025, he signed a memorandum instructing his administration to evaluate what he described as an emergency caused by unlawful migration and fentanyl trafficking from Canada, Mexico, and China. This memo directed officials to recommend trade and national security measures, signaling that tariffs were inevitable. On February 1st, 2025, Trump issued an executive order implementing a 25% tariff on goods from Canada and Mexico, while imposing a 10% tariff on Chinese imports. The White House confirmed these tariffs would be enforced beginning February 4th. Trudeau swiftly condemned the action and promised a proportional response. Canada announced countermeasures, targeting 30 billion Canadian dollars in American exports, with plans to escalate these retaliatory tariffs to 125 billion Canadian dollars over the following weeks. As concerns about economic instability grew, Trump unexpectedly announced a one-month suspension of tariffs on Canada and Mexico on February 3rd, following separate negotiations with both countries. In exchange, Canada agreed to enhance border security and appoint a fentanyl czar, while Mexico committed to deploying more troops to its northern border. However, the 10% tariff on Chinese imports proceeded as scheduled on February 4th. As the end of the one-month delay neared, tensions reignited. On February 27th, Trump reaffirmed that the 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico would be implemented when the suspension expired on March 4th, alongside an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods. Trudeau responded the next day, labeling the tariffs as punitive and unacceptable, vowing that Canada would retaliate. By March 3rd, fears of a full-scale trade war intensified, shaking financial markets. Speaking from the White House, Trump confirmed that the tariffs would be enacted at midnight. The markets reacted instantly, with the S&P 500 closing down 1.7%, marking its worst performance since December. At 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on March 4th, the tariffs officially took effect, triggering a rapid escalation as Canada and China announced reciprocal tariffs, with both nations vowing further economic retaliation. Trudeau denounced the decision as destructive and confirmed that Canada would immediately impose a 25% tariff on U.S. exports, including key industries such as agriculture, manufacturing, and consumer goods. Meanwhile, Mexico adopted a more measured approach. President Claudia Sheinbaum criticized the tariffs but opted to hold off on immediate retaliatory action, preferring to engage in direct talks with Trump first. The uncertainty surrounding the trade dispute further rattled markets, leading to deeper losses on Wall Street. However, in an unexpected move on March 5th, Trump delayed the imposition of auto tariffs for 1 month after major U.S. automakers, including Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, warned of potential disruptions to supply chains. This temporary reprieve stabilized the markets, leading to a rebound by the end of the trading day. Nonetheless, by March 6th, Trump signed an executive order delaying tariffs on goods compliant with the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Despite these adjustments, financial markets remained volatile, with the S&P 500 declining another 2% and the Nasdaq dropping 2.5%, reflecting persistent investor unease over the unpredictable nature of trade policies. As the trade dispute continued to evolve, uncertainty loomed over the future of U.S.-Canada relations. Businesses on both sides of the border scrambled to adapt to shifting policies, while political leaders considered their next steps. Whether a long-term resolution could be reached, or if the cycle of tariffs and retaliations would persist, remained an open question. Canada, however, showed no sign of backing down. In an unprecedented response to Trump's trade measures, Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced that the province would introduce a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S., starting Monday, March 10th. This policy would affect approximately 1.5 million American homes and businesses in states like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, which rely on Ontario's power supply. Ford emphasized that Ontario was prepared to escalate its response further, warning, "I won't hesitate to increase this surcharge, or, if necessary, cut off electricity altogether." Ford reaffirmed his commitment to defending Ontario's economy, even considering extreme measures such as halting electricity exports to key U.S. states. His response came in direct retaliation to Trump's decision to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian exports and a 10% duty on energy, a move that threatened to severely impact industries like auto manufacturing, steel production, and retail. At a press conference, Ford doubled down on his stance, cautioning that if necessary, Ontario would suspend electricity exports to U.S. states dependent on Canadian energy. "If they want to cripple Ontario's economy, I'll do whatever it takes, even if that means cutting off their power supply," he stated, with a defiant tone. His strong rhetoric underscored the seriousness of the escalating trade conflict, as Canada braced for the economic fallout from Trump's policies. Beyond energy exports, Ontario was considering additional retaliatory actions. Ford proposed imposing a surcharge on every megawatt of electricity sold to the U.S., raising costs for American consumers and businesses. He also hinted at canceling a $100 million contract with Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet service and removing all U.S. alcohol from Liquor Control Board of Ontario, LCBO outlets, if Trump's tariffs were implemented as planned. Economic analysts warned that Trump's tariffs could have severe repercussions, potentially leading to job losses and increased costs for Canadian industries. As Canada's industrial hub, Ontario was particularly vulnerable. In response, the provincial government earmarked over $40 billion in economic relief measures, including a $5 billion Protect Ontario account, tax deferrals, payroll subsidies, and direct municipal aid. These financial safeguards reflected the seriousness of the trade dispute and its potential impact on workers and businesses across the province. Despite these precautions, Ford acknowledged the unpredictability of Trump's next moves. "We have no idea what's coming tomorrow. I'm not even sure President Trump knows what's coming tomorrow," he remarked, highlighting the uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy. As businesses on both sides of the border braced for the formal implementation of tariffs, Canada's federal government also promised a forceful response. Ford supported a dollar-for-dollar countermeasure strategy, pledging to match any U.S. trade action with equal retaliation. While he stopped short of specifying exact provincial tariffs, his readiness to escalate Ontario's response made it clear that Canada would not back down if necessary. Meanwhile, Canadian Member of Parliament Charlie Angus strongly criticized the recent U.S. trade policies and Trump's rhetoric toward Canada. In a recent address, he expressed serious concerns over the economic and political repercussions of the ongoing trade war. Angus urged Canadians to refrain from purchasing U.S. goods as a response to the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. He emphasized the necessity of supporting domestic businesses and reducing reliance on American products, highlighting his commitment to protecting Canada's economic interests in the face of escalating trade disputes. Additionally, he strongly opposed President Trump's repeated assertions about potentially annexing Canada as the 51st U.S. state. Rejecting such claims outright, he reaffirmed Canada's sovereignty and independence. In a recent interview, Angus stated, "Canada is a proud nation with its own identity, and we will not entertain any notion that undermines our sovereignty." Further reinforcing his stance, Angus initiated a parliamentary petition urging the Canadian government to deny Trump an invitation to the upcoming G7 summit in June. This move illustrated his firm opposition to Trump's trade policies and rhetoric concerning Canada. As one of the world's largest economies, the U.S. heavily depends on imports across various essential industries critical to its stability and growth. From energy and raw materials to food, beverages, and skilled labor, international trade has long played a fundamental role in the American economy. However, under Donald Trump's presidency and his America First strategy, these trade relationships have faced significant challenges. Trump's administration imposed tariffs and trade restrictions on both allies and competitors, including Canada, the European Union, and China, in an attempt to strengthen domestic industries. While this policy aimed to protect American manufacturing and resonated with nationalist sentiments, it largely disregarded the deeply interconnected global supply chains that had evolved over decades of globalization. The United States does not simply import consumer goods, it also relies on external sources for crude oil, rare earth minerals, electricity, and other essential materials necessary for industrial and technological advancement. Moreover, global expertise plays a crucial role in maintaining the country's leadership in research and innovation. In response to the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, Canada has been considering countermeasures beyond traditional trade penalties. One of the more significant proposals involves limiting oil and electricity exports to the United States, an action that could disrupt crucial energy supply chains, given Canada's pivotal role in meeting American energy demands. Such a move would have severe consequences, particularly for industries that depend on a steady and reliable power supply. In addition to energy exports, Canada is also exploring potential restrictions on other key resources such as rare earth elements and natural gas, which are essential for industries ranging from defense to renewable energy. In 2024, the United States imported approximately $129.185 billion worth of energy from Canada, solidifying Canada's position as its largest energy supplier. This included 1.46 billion barrels of crude oil valued at $16.8 billion, 271 billion cubic feet of natural gas amounting to $10.8 billion, 37 terawatt-hours of electricity worth $1.85 billion, and 10 million pounds of uranium valued at $0.4 billion. Crude oil made up the bulk of these imports, demonstrating Canada's vital role in U.S. energy security. To mitigate its over-reliance on the U.S. market, Canada has been actively working to diversify its oil exports, particularly toward Asia, including China and Japan. This shift has gained momentum amid ongoing trade conflicts and potential U.S. tariff hikes. The Trans Mountain Expansion, TMX pipeline, which was completed in early 2024, has played a key role in redirecting Canadian crude oil to Asian markets. This pipeline links Alberta to the Pacific coast, facilitating shipments to countries such as China, Japan, and South Korea. In September 2024, refineries in Japan, South Korea, and Brunei received their first deliveries of Canadian crude through the TMX pipeline. Alberta's energy exports to China surged in the first 11 months of 2024, with total energy exports reaching $2 billion, a five-fold increase from the same period in 2023. This dramatic rise was primarily driven by crude oil shipments, which increased from virtually zero to $1.8 billion. Japan has also become an increasingly significant buyer of Canadian energy. In February 2025, Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, highlighted the necessity of expanding into the Japanese market, particularly as U.S. tariffs posed a growing risk to Canadian exports. This strategy aims to secure alternative buyers for Alberta's crude oil and natural gas. Despite being a top energy producer, the U.S. remains dependent on imports to satisfy regional and industrial energy needs. These imports include crude oil, natural gas, electricity, coal, and uranium, with Canada serving as a primary supplier across these sectors. In 2024, the United States imported an average of 6.1 million barrels per day of crude oil, with Canada supplying over 4 million barrels per day, accounting for 67% of total U.S. crude imports. These imports primarily flowed through major pipeline networks, including Keystone XL and the Enbridge Main Line, supplying refineries in key states. Illinois, home to major refineries in Chicago and Joliet, processes a significant share of Canadian crude. Texas, another key refining hub, receives heavy crude through the Keystone pipeline system. Minnesota benefits from the Enbridge Main Line, which delivers crude oil to refineries in St. Paul. While Michigan and Ohio receive Canadian crude via the same network, fueling refineries in Detroit and Toledo. These states heavily depend on Canadian oil for refining operations that produce gasoline, diesel, and other petroleum products essential to the Midwest and beyond. In addition to crude oil, Canadian natural gas imports are equally crucial to the U.S. energy landscape. In 2024, the United States imported 8.5 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, with 7.4 billion cubic feet per day coming from Canada. These imports primarily support the Midwest and Northeast, ensuring stable supplies for residential heating, power generation, and industrial use. States such as New York and those in New England, including Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, heavily rely on Canadian natural gas, particularly during the winter months when heating demands spike. Illinois and Michigan also depend on these imports for heating and industrial applications, while Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin use Canadian gas to power manufacturing and electricity generation. Beyond oil and natural gas, electricity imports from Canada play a crucial role in U.S. energy security. In 2024, the United States imported nearly 39 terawatt-hours of electricity, with 95% originating from Canada. This cross-border energy trade helps balance supply and demand across various regions, particularly in states directly connected to the Canadian grid. New York, for example, benefits from hydroelectric power imports from Quebec, which reduce its reliance on fossil fuels. Similarly, Vermont and the broader New England region depend on electricity from Hydro-Quebec, ensuring grid stability and complementing renewable energy sources. Michigan imports electricity from Ontario to meet peak demand, while Minnesota and North Dakota receive Canadian hydroelectricity to support their local grids. Although coal imports into the U.S. have seen a steady decline, Canada remains a modest supplier. In 2024, U.S. coal imports totaled 4 million short tons, sourced from Canada, Colombia, and Indonesia. Canadian coal is primarily used to support industrial and power generation needs in Michigan, while Minnesota utilizes a portion of these imports for steel manufacturing. Some coal shipments also reach New England, though the region has gradually shifted toward cleaner energy alternatives. Canada also plays a crucial role in supplying uranium to the United States, a resource vital for fueling nuclear power plants. In 2024, the U.S. imported 50 million pounds of uranium, with Canada accounting for 20% of the total supply. This uranium is indispensable for nuclear reactors in several states, particularly Illinois, which operates the highest number of nuclear power plants in the nation. Similarly, South Carolina and North Carolina depend heavily on Canadian uranium to sustain their nuclear energy facilities. Pennsylvania, another major producer of nuclear energy, benefits from a steady supply, while Tennessee, home to nuclear processing and enrichment plants, relies on these imports to maintain production. Despite the United States' substantial reliance on Canadian energy imports, the Trump administration implemented tariffs on Canadian goods, citing concerns over illegal immigration and drug trafficking. However, data indicates that Canada contributes only a small fraction of illicit drugs, particularly fentanyl, that enter the U.S., raising questions about the administration's stated justification for these trade policies. The government defended its actions by linking the tariffs to efforts to curb drug smuggling and unlawful migration, particularly the influx of fentanyl into the country. Yet, statistics reveal that Canada is responsible for merely 0.2% of the fentanyl entering the U.S., with the vast majority originating from China and Mexico. This discrepancy suggests that factors beyond drug-related concerns may be influencing these trade restrictions. One possible underlying motive behind these policies could be an attempt to assert greater control over Canada's vast natural resources and strategically significant territories. Canada possesses abundant reserves of oil, natural gas, and minerals, all of which are critical to the U.S. economy. Furthermore, its geographic position offers strategic advantages in the Arctic region, an area of growing geopolitical importance due to its untapped resources and new shipping routes emerging as ice caps continue to melt. Another potential driving factor is national security. If Canada were incorporated into the U.S., it would eliminate the northern border, streamlining defense logistics and reinforcing a unified North American security strategy. This perspective aligns with historical doctrines emphasizing continental defense, which may be contributing to the administration's rhetoric on annexation. Domestically, the annexation narrative could also be serving as a political strategy aimed at rallying nationalist sentiment within the U.S. electorate. By adopting a hardline stance on trade and border security, the administration may be seeking to solidify its political base, divert public attention from domestic issues, and project strength on the international stage. It is also possible that these annexation threats are being used as an aggressive negotiation tactic, designed to pressure Canada into making trade concessions. By proposing drastic measures, the administration may be attempting to gain leverage, compelling Canada to accept less favorable trade terms under the pretense of avoiding more extreme outcomes. Analysts speculate that these trade policies may be part of a larger strategic effort to push Canada into greater economic and geopolitical alignment with the United States. This theory is supported by Trump's repeated references to annexing Canada as a 51st state, with some interpreting these statements as attempts to link tariff relief to compliance with U.S. interests. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching. We truly appreciate you being here. If you found this content engaging or thought-provoking, we'd love for you to show your support by liking this video and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support means a lot to us. Feel free to check out another video from our channel. It's on the screen now.